First, I want to say thank you for your practice these days. And I really appreciated hearing everybody's reports today. Especially at the beginning of a retreat, it can be a challenge. And this is built into retreat. This is part of the package. We see what the mind and heart can do, both in terms of the wholesome and especially when things are challenging, in terms of the unwholesome. And we do this practice in order to direct the heart. As that verse of the Dhammapada that I quoted the other night says, cultivate the wholesome, refrain from the unwholesome. So we direct the heart to the wholesome. So beginning this talk tonight with another Dhammapada verse. These are actually two, verses 42 and 43. More than a thief, more than an enemy, a misdirected heart brings one to harm. Brings one to harm. And then it says, neither mother, father, nor any family member can give you the blessings generated by your own well-directed heart. And as I said last night when I was talking about training, a lot of the point of this Metta Bhavana is to direct the heart in a wholesome. So we direct the heart in that wholesome direction towards benevolence, towards kindness, towards acceptance. And I want to continue what I was talking about last night, to talk a bit about purification. So this purification of heart that happens as we train the heart, as we direct the heart. And it's a different kind of purification than happens in Vipassana, but no less powerful. As I said earlier, Metta Bhavana is a samadhi practice. But as opposed to other, and there are many other forms of samadhi practice, as opposed to these, it has we say in English, it's a twofer. You get two for the price of one. Because as opposed to the other forms of samadhi practice, we develop two things, of course. We develop the concentration, and we develop the metta. So this stands in contrast to, as you know, Vipassana practice, which is an insight practice. In the Mahasi tradition, Vipassana practice develops some concentration, but not jhana necessarily. Mostly we rely on khanika samadhi, in Pali, momentary concentration, which is the fixity of the mind moment to moment to moment on objects that arise. And so in the Vipassana practice, there is an emphasis on liberating insight rather than concentration. At least this form of the Vipassana practice. And because of this, because of the fact that it is the direct path to liberation, this is what we learn, we tend often to be Vipassana purists. So we prefer the Vipassana consciously or unconsciously. We think of it as better than. So even if we really want to be here to cultivate metta, there can be resistance. And then, of course, depending on how long we have been practicing Vipassana, it has become a habit. You can think of Metta Bhavana and Vipassana Bhavana as different meditation languages, or different habits. Both of them are good, but in different ways. And if we are more attuned to Vipassana, it is very natural, and a number of you have articulated this today, it's very natural for the mind to slip back into that preference, into that mode of practice that is Vipassana. So the purification that happens in Vipassana is fundamentally different than the purification that happens here with the metta. And that's undeniable, that's very true. But the secret of this metta practice that you only get once you've been doing it for a while is the purification that happens in this practice is the back door into something quite profound. So, of course, there are a lot of differences between these two. Really, the main difference that makes this practice actually seem much more messy is that metta bhavana enters the door of the Dhamma through our conventional lives, through our relationships, through stories of our relationships. Whereas Vipassana enters the door of the Dhamma through the understanding of absolute reality. So we actually don't have to deal with our relationships. It's just thinking, 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 remembering, remembering, remembering. And you see things through the lens of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. So, with metta bhavana, though, here we are. We use beings in different categories to be objects of the cultivation of metta. And these beings are not kind of theoretical beings. There are beings we know and relate to. So the purification of heart that happens here in the metta bhavana is one that is directly related to all our ego-based stories of me and my benefactor, dear friend, neutral person, enemy, all these people. This is one of the reasons I hated it at first. I didn't want to engage in any of that. But here's the thing, this practice doesn't ask us to engage in that, it just asks us to face it. Here we are, we've come to cultivate a kind heart, and everything that isn't that will arise to be known. Attachment, agendas, disconnection, anger, self-righteousness, how we can hold a grudge, envy, jealousy, all sorts of stuff comes up. And a lot of the things that emerge in the heart, in the mind stream during this practice, are things that have often been unacknowledged or unseen. Certainly anything we have not resolved will show up. Isn't this wonderful? We don't put this on flyers for Metta Retreat. Come and see all the unwholesome things in your mind. No thanks, I think I'll go do some dancing. But I think of it often when I do laundry in Burma. You know, you have a bucket and you put water and soap in it and your clothes and you let it soak. And all the grunge comes to the top. So this is the purification in this metta practice. To acknowledge, to understand the power of these mind states, not to pretend they're not important, not to just brush them away as conventional reality, but to acknowledge them, let them be there, not feed them in any way, and incline the heart away to metta. So it's not a purification from insight, not from seeing them as empty, but a purification from seeing them as, no, I don't want to go there, I'm going here instead. So one big place of purification at this point in the retreat is not necessarily stories, but hindrances. So I just want to briefly mention them because at this point in the retreat, they're universal. And how we deal with them is a very good example of this difference between this metta style and the vipassana style. So these hindrances are just impersonal mind states that arise for everybody at this point in the retreat. They're what one of my early teachers, Menindraji, used to call lawful. I don't know. Meaning...
Legittimi. Okay.
Legitimate, yeah. in accordance with the law of Dhamma.
Yeah.
So just to briefly list them, many of you know them very well, some of you do not. So these are states that get in the way of concentration, that get in the way of the development of metta. The first is sense desire, kamachanda in Pali. And in the texts, there's a metaphor for this, and it's like pure, clear water that's colored with dye. And we're entranced by the beauty of the color. So maybe we've gone out to do some walking meditation, and we walk under one of those cherry trees, and they're hanging with beautiful fruit. And we don't notice it, but we see that, and we're just, And then we have fond memories of picking cherries with our family when we were little, whatever it is. Or maybe we want to strip the tree of all the fruit and eat them. We just lose it. Sense desire. So any of the physical senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, tasting. The second hindrance is ill will, vyapada in Pali. And this is likened to boiling water. It's hot and it's moving and you can't see the bottom and it's just too much. So we're sitting quietly minding our own business and somebody opens the window. Or maybe we like an open window and somebody closes it. Or somebody happens to breathe a little too strongly or walk a little too loudly. And then there's the response, a reaction. I don't have to give you any more examples. I'm sure you all know this one. The third is drowsiness and dullness. So physical drowsiness and mental dullness. These are two separate states. And a number of you have mentioned experiencing this these last days. This is so, this is where the word lawful really fits. When we come into retreat from our busy lives, often the first response is, oh. And the more stimulated our lives have become, the more likely this is. Because especially now that we have these, this is not a telephone, but it could be, we have these devices that we're constantly stimulating ourselves with. Mm. The only time some people stop sense contact and get quiet is when they go to sleep. So when we stop doing that and we get quiet and we sit down, the mind says, oh, it must be nap time. This is how we've trained ourselves. So please be patient. And the metaphor for this in the text is water that's covered by scum, algae all over the top. Mm-hmm. You can't see at all into it. So the fourth hindrance is the opposite of the third. It's restlessness and remorse. Uddaka, uttacha, kukucha in Pali. I love those words because they're restless in themselves. Mm. And the metaphor for this in the text is water that's been, the surface is moved by the wind. It's not hot and boiling like ill will, but there's just movement all the time. And restlessness and remorse are two different things. Remorse is what happens if we've done something wrong and we can't get quiet because the mind is chewing on that. Whereas restlessness can be either physical or mental, just pure restlessness. And it can have a number of roots. Where it comes from doesn't really matter. One thing to notice, and I think a number of you have mentioned this already today, is that sleepiness and restlessness can go back and forth like a pendulum. Mm-hmm. Because we've trained the mind to be either hyperstimulated or off. So we can go back and forth between these two, and it can be very frustrating to find the way into the middle ground. And finally there's doubt, vicikiccha in Pali. And so doubt is likened in the text to water that's been muddy and shaken up. And it does have this agitated aspect to it. It's often accompanied by endless questions. Well, maybe is this the right way or is that the right way? Maybe I should do this or maybe I should do that. We can't settle on anything. So we can doubt the practice. Oh, I wish I'd done a Vipassana retreat. This isn't for me. Maybe I shouldn't. We think about what we're doing and we can't wholeheartedly commit to it. One person was saying she goes to a Vipassana retreat and wants to do Metta, and comes to a Metta retreat and wants to do Vipassana. So doubt is a manifestation of the mind that always thinks the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, not here. And it often comes when these other 4 hindrances have arisen. And we forget, these hindrances are lawful, it's normal right now for them to happen. We forget that. And we think, I must be doing something wrong. Maybe there's something wrong with the practice, or maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe this isn't the right time. We totally go down that line of thought that says, no, maybe, yes. That line of thought that is total indecision. Yeah, like that. So in working with these hindrances to purify them, Vipassana style and Metta style are different. As you know, when you're doing Vipassana and the hindrances arise, you go right into the middle of them with awareness. So you connect with that experience so as to understand them and to understand their real nature. So we see ill will arising. We go into the experience of ill will. We note it. We think, dosa has arisen. Dosa feels like this. And we observe it until it goes away. And we observe the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and impersonal nature of that experience. In the Metta practice, we don't go into the middle of them. Acknowledge their presence kindly, with a friendly attitude, but then continue to develop the Metta. We just kind of let them be there and turn the mind instead to the development of loving kindness. And we direct the mind. We give attention to the wholesome while allowing the wholesome to just be there and go away by itself. We pay attention to them only to develop a caring heart. And often the presence of the hindrances really can. We go to ourselves and go, wow, may I be at ease with this? This is not easy. And it opens the heart in some way to care. In the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 20, the sutta, it's a sutta that speaks of ways of working with thought. This is given not specifically with regard to the metta, but this strategy is given as the first option in how to work with difficult states. We turn the attention away from the unwholesome object to something that is wholesome. So specifically in terms of the metta practice, we don't feed them by way of resistance or indulgence, but just let them be there in this field of metta that we're cultivating. And we direct the mind towards the metta and away from the unwholesome mind state. So please don't fall into the trap of trying to avoid or suppress the hindrances. The instruction is simply to continue to cultivate metta. So there is an acknowledgement. We're not suppressing or avoiding. We recognize them, but don't go into them. We don't try to fix them. We don't try to understand them. And we certainly don't try to process them. Process. So we just return to cultivating metta over and over and over. And when the hindrances are strong, and when the storylines that come in the practice are strong, I tend to think of it as a metta bhavana reality check, and I really appreciate it. Maybe this is perverse, but I'd rather see it than have it there kind of behind the scenes, unknown and unacknowledged. So when these states arise, it's actually, especially if it's not something you've been aware of, it's actually really good news. Because you can actually see and access what's there to be purified. And if it's something that's very familiar, at least you know, okay, I can't delude myself that I'm over this. And this steady and patient inclination of the heart to metta that we do in this practice really it creates a container so that we can hold them with more grace and gracefulness in the practice. So I use that word because there is a graciousness of acceptance. Yes, these kilesa, these hindrances, these unwholesome mind states, these difficulties, we don't want them in our lives, and yet there they are. Complete acceptance of these states does not mean indulging in them, but it does mean being willing to acknowledge there they are and they're important. That steady, patient reinclination that is, well, may I be at ease anyway, is one way to just let them have their life and go away by themselves. We're not feeding them by way of resistance. And there can be so much resistance woven into the Vipassana practice. I want to be done with this suffering. I'm sick of it, right? And we're in a hurry to be done with the suffering. That's actually dosa, ill will. So when we have this acceptance that these states come and go, and there they are, that we get with this metta practice, it changes everything, both in our life and in our Vipassana practice. And in an onward leading Vipassana practice, there is so much heartfulness and metta woven into that doesn't make a big deal out of these unwholesome mind states, but just allows them to be there and be known. And having metta as, to use computer language, as a background operating system, having metta as that is what makes the Vipassana practice possible, because it's non-resistance. We're more open to the truth of the way things are right now without resistance, without being attached to some way we think it should be. We're more relaxed and less driven. And we're really much more able to accept the presence of faults just as objects to be investigated. We don't make a big deal out of them. So we have this friendly presence, this warm, what Mathieu Ricard calls warm mindfulness. It results warm mindfulness.
Yeah,
Mathieu Ricard. So if you are feeling resistance to the metta practice, because you're more used to Vipassana, please remember, whatever metta you cultivate now will directly support the unfolding of your Vipassana practice. And there's another aspect to this as well, and that is metta undercuts selfishness and self-involvement. And there's a lot of power to this, because the hindrances, when they're strong and present and taken as mine, are just plain depressing. But when we see them as just process, it's not a big deal. So in this metta bhavana, in general, as far as the hindrances are concerned, don't overthink it. It's such a simple practice. I'm sure you figured that one out by not easy, but very simple. Just incline the mind to metta. And I mentioned a number of times in the interviews today about patience. So this is why Sayadaw U Indika uses the metaphor of metta aircon, because it takes time for the room to cool down. And why we use the metaphor of planting seeds. Just plant the seeds, they'll grow in due course. There's a simple magic of this practice. It's, I used to be a scientist, and I was so resistant to this because it seemed so stupid. But it works. Very pragmatically, it works. And all we need to do is to keep doing it. So set aside expectations. Set aside preconceptions and just dive into repeating this simple phrase over and over again, connecting as best as you can. And simply do what you can in the practice. That's good enough. This is directing the heart in a wholesome direction. And purification through acknowledgement and reinclination. So I want to close with the same Dhammapada verse I started with. Neither mother, father, nor any family member can give you the blessings generated by your own well-directed heart. So may this direction of heart again and again and again bear abundant fruit in your practice and in your lives.